Fournier liked to go for drives with his wife by his side, and with their baby son safely in the back of their van. What differentiated this family from any other was that their road trips ended in the assault, mutilation, and murder of virgins. The media called Fournier the ogre of the Ardennes. Though his crimes were huge, the man police arrested was small, gray-haired, and frail. To satisfy Fournier's depraved fantasies, the young women had to be virgins. The couple was definitely a match made in hell. Apart from helping Fournier entrap and capture girls, it was Olivier's job to check that the victims fit her husband's sick requirement. Michel Fournier was born in 1942 in Sedan, France, near to the Belgium border. His father was a metalworker and his mother, a farmer's daughter. Michel was a quiet child with a slightly above-average IQ who liked chess and classical music. But as an adult, Fournier struggled to hold down a job. Forestry worker and school supervisor were some of the many jobs he tried and failed. But it was his string of convictions that revealed his true calling. As is with most serial killers, Michel had many run-ins with authorities. His first arrest, in 1966, was for child sexual assault. It ended his first marriage. He fathered 3 children with his second wife, but this marriage was also doomed due to his inappropriate attraction to minors. The marriage also ended after he was again arrested for the sexual assault and indecent assault of minors. It was while he was in custody awaiting his trial that he placed an advert in a Catholic magazine asking for a pen pal. Monique Olivier, a nurse and mother of 3, replied. As a child she had suffered from a stammer, and as an adult she had suffered from a series of physically abusive relationships. Some psychologists have theorized that she was in a vulnerable situation and a perfect prey for Michel. They began a relationship via correspondence. In letters, Fournier, a former tradesman and school supervisor, claimed he was traumatized by an incestuous relationship with his mother. But soon, their relationship took a dark turn. The two began to express their deep, dark desires to each other. Olivier promised to help Fernier hunt virgins if he helped kill her former husband. Only one part of that bargain would be fulfilled. Psychologists might speculate that obsession with virgins was related to his problems with premature ejaculation. Only virgins would lack the sexual experience necessary to criticize his condition. Olivier's duties was to physically inspect the victims prior to Fournier sexually assaulting them to ensure they met his criteria. She did this by physically confirming their virginity was still intact. Michel was released in 1987. He was let out early because he had been labeled a model prisoner. Or so they thought, since 2 months later, the killing spree would begin. Olivier, his muse, was waiting for Fournier at the prison gates. When he was released in 1987, ready to start a life together. In December 1987, Monique Olivier pulled up to 17-year-old Isabelle Laville when she was walking home from school in Auxerre. She told her she was lost and convinced her to get into the van to help her with directions. As they were driving, they stopped to pick up for Michel. They said that his car had broken down. The truth was that the couple had been watching Isabelle for a while and had specifically targeted her that day. Once the 3 of them were in the van together, Fournier sexually assaulted and murdered Isabelle. 1 year later, 20-year-old Fabien Leroy was abducted from a supermarket. Her body was found the next day. She'd been shot, gunned in the chest. However, this string of murders wasn't going to stop the couple from living a normal life and moving on like everything was normal. The couple married and had a son together and bought a chateau on the forested border region between France and Belgium. In 1988, the couple organized their biggest murder. Michel had made a connection while in prison, sharing a cell with a bank robber from one of France's most infamous gangs. The robber's wife had asked to dig up stolen gold buried in a graveyard. She came with them in their van to give them directions, collected the gold, but they then strangled the woman and used the loot to buy a chateau. In 1989, The couple claimed their youngest victim, Elizabeth Bridget, was just 12 years old when she was abducted from the Belgian town of Namur. Her body was found 14 years later in the grounds of the couple's chateau. With their son in tow, they presented the perfect picture of a trustworthy family. And their happily married respectability tricked girls who would otherwise be wary. Fournier and Olivier sometimes pretended their son was ill, and they needed the girl to help direct them to a hospital. Another ruse was for Olivier to drive alone and pick up a girl. But then, as they were driving along, they would see Fournier waving an empty can of petrol as if he just needed fuel for a nearby car. Olivier would then stop to pick him up. Fournier would either strangle, shoot, or sometimes inject air into his victim's veins to cause a heart attack. Death, however, was no escape from his attentions. After he killed one girl with a screwdriver, he sexually assaulted her corpse. Olivier would watch as he did all this, and they would later recreate these scenes in their sex life. Fournier would either dispose of the bodies in his grounds or the surrounding area. The killings went on for years, but the authorities treated each case separately. No one considered the possibility that the Ardennes region had an unusually high murder rate, because a serial killer was using it as his hunting ground. On June 2003, Fournier attempted to kidnap a 13-year-old Belgian girl. She was walking along a road in her hometown when a Citroën van pulled up, and its driver, Fournier, asked her for directions. He insisted she get in to show him the way. When she did, Fournier pushed her into the back of the truck and tied her hands and ankles. "I felt like I was in a film," the girl would say in evidence during the couple's trial. "If you don't give me pleasure, you won't be going home." Fernier also said he was far better than Marc Dutroux, a Belgian pedophile and serial killer active around the same time. According to the girl, Fournier's threat to kill her came after she screamed and tried to resist when he touched her breasts. She managed to free herself by biting her way through the ropes binding her wrists and jump out when the van stopped. A passing car picked her up and drove her to a police station, where the driver gave police Fournier's car number plate. Investigators found some of the girl's hair inside the van, and soon after, Olivier made a police statement against her husband. The police questioned both Fournier and Olivier, but they didn't realize they were interviewing the French equivalent of Fred and Rose West. It was only Olivier's mistaken belief that the police knew more than they did that caused her to confess in the hope that her sentence would be reduced. Sensing the game was up, Fournier cooperated with police and led them to some of the bodies of his victims buried near his property. While in trial, Olivier, who admitted to helping her husband in some of the murders, sought to minimize her role by claiming Fournier trapped her in his psychological grip. She claimed theirs was a master-slave relationship, adding she was the terrorized wife of a domineering and violent husband. But a prosecutor described her as a willing accomplice. Complicit, women who responded to the screams of some of her husband's victims with a deafening silence. The gray-haired, bespectacled Fournier provided horrific details, while admitting he had a sexual obsession with virgins who he coveted to satisfy a 16-year bloodlust. He said he was in an altered state when he killed his was sentenced for life for the murders of all 7 of the victims whose bodies had been then found. Olivier also got life for complicity with no possibility of parole. In prison, Fournier confessed to more murders, and it is suspected they might have killed as more than 30 people. He died Monday in a high-security ward of a Paris hospital, aged 79. Let us know, do you think Olivier was as much responsible for the murders as Fournier was, or was she a victim?